Alright, this video is going to take you through worksheet 6.4 and how to do sum and difference formulas. For each one of the problems on 9 through 19, the directions want me to find the exact value of the trig function. Normally I would say go look at your circle and go find where y, on the circle at 5 pi over 12 and go tell me the y value. Go on the circle and find 7 pi over 12 and tell me the x value for cosine. The problem is none of these are actually on the circle. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to find two values on the circle that I can either add or subtract to get 5 pi over 12, 7 pi over 12, 165 degrees, and 17 pi over 12. So I'm going to start by looking at the fraction problems, because those are the ones that give you all the hardest time. As I'm looking at my unit circle, here's a copy of a unit circle, none of these are over 12. So the first thing I have to do is I have to change pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2, and so on to be over 12. So I'm going to do that over here on the side, a little scratch work. So if I were going to change pi over 6 to be over 12, pi over 6, if I wanted to put it over 12, I'd multiply top and bottom by 2, and it would be equivalent to 2 pi over 12. Pi over 4, if I wanted that to be over 12, I'd multiply top and bottom by 3, and I'd get 3 pi over 12. I'm just going to do the whole first quadrant. I'm going to change pi over 3 to be over 12. When I do that, I get 4 pi over 12. I'm going to go do one more time. I'm going to do pi over 2, and I'm going to multiply top and bottom of that by 6, and I get 6 pi over 12. So now all my fractions are over 12, and I'm trying to, on number 9, I'm trying to get 5 pi over 12. So which of these fractions adds up to 5 pi over 12? Well, these two do. So what I want to do is I'm going to rewrite this problem to say sine of 2 pi over 12 and 3 pi over 12 means I'm adding pi over 6 plus pi over 4. So this is going to be my alpha in the formula, and this is going to be my beta in the formula. So at the top, we have our formula for sine, where you're adding. So sine, when you're adding an a and b, you take the sine of alpha, multiply it by the cosine of beta, plus the cosine of alpha, and multiply it by the sine of beta. So sine pi over 6 plus pi over 4 equals sine of alpha. So what is sine value at pi over 6? At pi over 6, the y value is 1/2 times, it says sine of alpha cosine beta. My cosine at pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. And then my formula for sine a plus b says put a plus sign, so I put a plus sign. Then it says do cosine alpha sine beta. So I want cosine of pi over 6, which is root 3 over 2, times sine of beta, which is pi over 4, root 2 over 2. So all you're doing right now is you're going on your circle, and everywhere it says sine, you're writing down the y values, and everywhere it says cosine, we're writing down the x values. That's it. Now we're going to do some multiplication and then some addition. So when you multiply fractions, we multiply top times top and bottom times bottom. Do the same thing over here, top times top and bottom times bottom. When we add fractions, we need a common denominator, which is what I have. Root 2 plus root 6, those are not like terms, so we write them side by side, and we're done. And you're going to do the exact same thing on number 11, but you're going to use a cosine formula. You're going to do the exact same thing on number 17, and you're going to use a sine formula. I'm going to go do 13 with you because it's a degree problem, so it's a little bit different. So on 13, I'm trying to find 165 degrees on my circle. And again, as I look at my circle, I see there's not 165 degrees specifically. So what I want to do is see, are there two angles I could add to get 165? Well, you can do this more than one way. We could do 30 and we could do 135, or we could do 45 and 120. It doesn't matter. At the very end, we're going to get the exact same answers. So I'm just going to pick, because I'm allowed to, and I'm going to choose to do 45 degrees plus 120 degrees. So this is going to be my alpha, and this is going to be my beta. This problem is a cosine problem, it's addition, And here's my cosine addition formula. I'm going to do cosine alpha times cosine beta minus sine alpha sine beta. So notice, even though I'm adding for cosine, we put a subtraction sign in the middle. So you have to be really careful on your test that you're paying attention. Okay, so we're going to have cosine of 45 plus 120 equals. Formula says take cosine of alpha. My alpha is 45. Cosine of 45 degrees is root 2 over 2 times cosine at 120. Cosine at 120 is a negative 1/2. So I did cosine 45, cosine 120. Then my formula says to put a minus sign, so I will. Then it says to do sine alpha, sine beta. So I'm going to do the y value at 45 and the y value at 120. The y value at 45 is root 2 over 2. The y value at 120 is root 3 over 2. So again, we're going to go multiply fractions, top times top, bottom times bottom. I get negative root 2 over 4 minus root 6 over 4. I'm subtracting two fractions, and I already have a common denominator. Root 2 and root 6 are not like terms, so I write them side by side. So it's, let me try that again. So it's negative root 2 minus root 6 over 4. And you're done. Okay, the bottom of the worksheet does everything backwards. The bottom of the worksheet actually gives me the right-hand sides of the formulas at the top, and I have to figure out which one it matches. So let's go look at 27. On 27, I have a formula that says sine cosine minus cosine sine. Sine cosine minus cosine sine. I come up to the top, and I'm looking for a sine cosine. Not it, not it. That has a sine cosine, and this one has a sine cosine. So look back at 27, sine cosine minus. This says sine cosine plus, not it. Sine cosine minus. So this is the one I want. I want the one that says sine alpha minus beta. So number 27, I'm going to go write sine A minus B. This is the A, this is the B. So now I'm going to go write sine pi over 12 minus 7 pi over 12. Now I'm going to go subtract. Pi take away 7 is negative 6 pi over 12. That reduces to negative pi over 2. So I go to negative pi over 2 on my circle. Positive pi over 2 is up top, so negative pi over 2 down here at the bottom. That ordered pair is 0, negative 1. They want sine, so my answer is negative 1. You're going to do the same thing for 23 and 21. You're going to try to figure out which formula it matches. So 21 goes sine, cosine, cosine, sine. So I look up at the top, and I'm trying to find a sine, cosine, cosine, sine. There are two of them. Now I want to find the one that's got the plus in the middle. This time, it's the one that says sine A plus B. This is my A, this is my B. So I have sine of 20 plus 10, which would be sine of 30. At 30 degrees, my sine value is equal to 1/2. I'm going to let you go do 23 without me. All right, so I'm going to turn the page. Over here, on 31 through 35, all three of these are XYR problems. And when you're doing the XYR problems, you're going to have to do it twice. Once for A, once for B, and then plug into the formula. So I'm going to do 31A and maybe 33A. Let's see. So on 31, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split this problem in half. I want an A side of the problem, and I want a B side of the problem. So I know that A is going to be between 0 and pi over 2 on my circle. So I'm going to go draw a little circle, and I'm going to go mark the 0, right-hand corner. I'm going to go mark pi over 2. It's up top. This tells me I'm going to be in quadrant 1. And if I'm in quadrant 1, it means my X, my Y are all going to be positive numbers. Because they gave me sine, they gave me the Y and the R. My Y is 3, my R is 5. To find my x that's missing, I'm going to do my formula, x squared plus y squared equals r squared. And we know that 25 take away 9 is 16, so x squared equals 16, so x equals 4. Now I'm going to do the beta side. Same steps. I need an x, a y, and an r. I'm going to go find my quadrant. I'm going to mark the 2 points they gave me, the 2 conditions they gave me. They told me that my b is going to be between negative pi over 2, which is down here at the bottom, and 0, which is to the right, which puts me in quadrant 4. In quadrant 4, I know that my y value will be a negative. So I'm going to go ahead and put a negative there before I forget. They gave me cosine, so they gave me the x, and they gave me the r. So my x is 2 root 5, and my r is 5. I'm going to go plug into my x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So 2 root 5 squared is 20 plus y squared equals r squared, which is 25. I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to get 5. Y squared equals 5, so y equals the square root of 5. So now I have my x, my y, and my r for the a side and the b side, and I'm going to go plug into my formula. My first formula, sine a plus b, the formula says sine a cosine b plus cosine a sine b. So all I have to do is every time it says a sine, I need to go grab the y and the r. Every time it says cosine, I'm going to go grab the x and the r. Just pay attention to whether I'm on side A or side B. So this says sine A. So I go to the A side. Because it says sine, I'm going to grab the y and the r. Times, it says cosine B. So I go to the B side, and I'm going to grab the x and the r. Bring down your plus sign. Now it says go do cosine at A. So I go to the A side, and I grab the x and the r because it's cosine. Then it says sine B, so I go to the B side. I grab the y, and I grab the r. And now it's just like on the front. We're going to multiply our fractions and then add. So top times top for the first one is going to give me 6 root 5 over 25. Now I'm going to do the second fraction. 4 times negative root 5 is going to give me negative 4 root 5 over 25. I have a common denominator of 25. That's 6 root 5, take away 4 root 5. 6 take away 5 is 1, so it's 1 root 5 over 25. Right. I feel like I did something wrong. Let me double check. So y over r, x over r, that's right. And then I'm going to do x over r, y over r. Oh, well, I did do something wrong. I didn't subtract right. 6 take away 4 is 2. Silly me. Okay. So 6 root 5 take away 4 root 5 is 2 root 5 over 25. Okay. So you're going to do the same thing for cosine a plus b. You're going to use that formula and plug in. You're going to do the same thing here. You're going to use this formula and plug in. I want to do one that's got a tangent in it, so I'm going to go look at 33. And on 33, I'll do part B so you can see a cosine. So again, the first thing we're going to do is split it in half. I need an A side and a B side. They tell me my quadrant. They tell me to mark pi over 2 at the top and pi over here, which puts me in quadrant 2. Quadrant 2, my x is negative, my y is positive. They gave me tangent, and anytime they give you tangent, they give you the y and the x. So my y is positive 4, my x is negative 3. I'm going to go do x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So x squared plus y squared equals r squared. 9 plus 16 is 25. So 25 equals r squared. So r equals 5. Okay, side A is done. We're going to do side B. So side B, we need an x, a y, and an r. They told me that I'm going to be between 0 and pi over 2, which puts me in quadrant 1, so everything's positive. They gave me cosine, so they gave me the x over the r. I'm going to go find my y by doing x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So x squared plus y squared equals r squared. I'm going to subtract and get 3. So I have y squared equals 3. So y equals the square root of 3. Alright, so now that I have x, y, r for both sides, I'm going to go plug into my formula. So on the front of your paper, you'll see for cosine A plus B, it says cosine A cosine B minus sine A sine B. So everywhere it says cosine, I'm going to grab the x and the r. Everywhere it says sine, I'm going to grab the y and the r. Okay, so it says take cosine of A. So I come over here to A and I get negative 3 over 5 times cosine of B, which is 1 over 2. Bring down my minus. Now I'm going to do sine of A. So 4 over 5 times sine of B, root 3 over 2. Now I'm going to multiply my fractions and then subtract. Top times top gives me negative 3. Bottom times bottom gives me 10. Minus top times top gives me 4 root 3. Bottom times bottom gives me 10. These are not like terms on the top. I already have my common denominator, so I just write these side by side. Done. Okay, and you're going to do the same thing when you come over here to problem number 35. I'm going to go look at one on the back real quick. On the back, they want you to establish an identity. So this is kind of like worksheet 6.3. So what they want me to do is they want me to plug into my formula, and I'm going to keep working until I get cosine theta to pop out. So the first thing you want to do is probably write down the formula you need for sine A plus B. This is my A, this is my B. So the formula for sine of A plus B says sine of A cosine of B plus cosine of A sine of B. This is my A, this is my B. So I'm going to plug in. So it says sine of pi over 2 times cosine, and my B is actually theta, so I just write down theta, plus cosine of pi over 2 times sine of theta. Now on my circle, pi over 2 is up here at the top, that's what pi over 2 is, and that ordered pair is 0, 1. So where it says sine of pi over 2, that's 1. So I have 1 times cosine of theta plus cosine of pi over 2 is 0. So I have 0 times sine of theta. 1 times cosine theta is cosine theta. 0 times sine is 0. Cosine theta plus 0 equals cosine theta, just like they wanted. Okay, I'm going to go do it one more time so you can see another one. I'm going to go look at number 41. This time when I'm doing 41, I'm going to need a sine formula, and I want the one where it subtracts. My goal is to keep working until I can get it to say sine theta. So the formula I need for sine of A minus B is sine alpha cosine beta minus cosine alpha sine beta. And again, these formulas are on the front of your worksheet. You don't have to memorize them for the test. You just have to know how to use them. Alright, so I'm going to go plug in. I'm going to have sine of pi cosine of beta. My beta is theta. Minus cosine of pi times, that's a root cosine, sine of theta. Okay, so these are the two things I have to multiply. So I got to go find pi on my circle. Pi on my circle is over here in the left-hand corner. That ordered pair is negative 1 comma 0. So sine at pi is 0 times cosine theta minus, excuse me, cosine at pi is negative 1 times sine theta. 0 times cosine is 0 minus negative 1 times sine is negative sine. 0 minus a negative sign is a positive sign, just like they wanted. Okay, that wraps up worksheet 6-4. Hopefully that'll get you through whatever you need to do, and you can bring me some questions to class if you need to.